Page 138. But before we get there, Moshe, I don't see him here yet. He did want me to review something, which we'll do when he gets back. The basic idea of the last chapter was the virtue of Shmon Esrei. The Zohar HaKodesh says there are dalet tikunim, there are 4 corrective methods used to correct Shechina Begalusa. And I just want to point out that when the Zohar HaKodesh says that, the Zohar is talking beklalut, generally speaking. What Hasidism does, what the Baal Shem Tov does, and in this case through the lens of the Alter Rebbe, he personalizes it. And this is one of the beauties of Hasidus in general, and Chabad Hasidus in particular, to take ideas that are general and to personalize them. And especially today, in our world, this is very valuable. This isn't just theoretical and nice ideas and you get a high, but it actually can make an impact in your life. And this is something that we need to remember as we learn Torah Bichlal in general and Hasidus specifically. You need to walk away with a bottom line. If you don't have a bottom line, it's a good intellectual exercise, but you're not going to be able to get that degree to be an MD and cure patients in a hospital. You won't. Sorry. Look, I've done a lot of reading and counseling and thinking. I don't have the degree that Hillel does. Well, that limits me to certain people in certain fields. That's the facts of life. The facts of life is that if I would have certain degrees, I could have been, let's say, speaking at conferences with professors. And maybe in certain areas I know more than them, as they do more than me. But you don't have the degree. And I can't tell you how many times I was told by friends, professors who would love to have me lecture at the college, at university, and but the rule is, you got the PhD, you can get in. You don't have the PhD, you can't get through the doors. And that's why Rabbi Alter B'Tzion Metzger, some of you might have heard of him, he's in Kvanai Zal Hamar Afushalei, but he encouraged me at the age of 55 or 50, he encouraged me, go get a degree. I said, at this age I should get a degree. He says, yes, people like you need to have a degree so you can make a difference to the college students. I tried, but it was too much for my savlanut. I didn't do it. Yes, Yonason.
Yeah, when I was in Morristown for 5 years, they were accredited with the Delphi University, and I got a BA in religious education, which helped me get my MA in special education.
And thank you. And I have that BA too, and I was told it would help me get an MA, but I needed a PhD to do what I wanted to do. An MA is not good enough. And at that time, Touro College didn't have a PhD program. So the dean was willing to accept me and put me into the MA program directly, and he actually wanted to give me a free scholarship. He really wanted me. But I told him, until you have a PhD program, I'm not interested. And then when he had a PhD program, I just wasn't up to doing all that work. And I said, look, I wrote a book, Your Better Self. It was endorsed by Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tversky, who you're having a celebration with, I think, for this week in Bet Shemesh at the Shul Eish Kodesh. And use that as my dissertation. I wrote it already. It wasn't acceptable. You have to rewrite, you have to restudy and all that. So anyway, let's go on. It's not this was just the Farshbais, this was the dessert before the Shir. So what does he say over here in Zohar? In Zohar HaKodesh. He says that there's dalet tikkun shchinta, 4 tikkun shchinta. The mita, the shulchan, the kisei, and the menorah. The bed, the table, the chair, and the menorah. And the first 3 things were kishma shel amita, the evening service, then shachris. The first 2 points of shachris is psukkah de zimra, and the first one's psukkah de zimra and birchas krishma. And the next one is birchas krishma. You have to sit like Shema, where you settle, you meditate, and then comes Shmon Esrei. What's the mile of Shmon Esrei? What's the virtue and advantage of Shmon Esrei? Silence. How many of us have thought about the virtue of silence? Do we ever discuss how important silence is? No. Usually we talk about be talkative and be, expressive. Silence. Well, in the early 2000s, I think 2002, I brought a friend from Manhattan to the Amshanova Rebbe in Yerushalayim and Bayit Vagan. Maybe some of you know him or have gone to him. He's a real special Jew, probably a Beinoni of Tanya, a tzaddik. Anyway, so we spent with him an hour and 45 minutes, which was very unusual. I got there about 5 in the morning and left 6:45. He walked us out down the steps. He went to the mikveh in his shul, and we went into the taxi back to our hotel. Before we left, my friend, who was not yet at that time fully religious, was so impacted by the Rebbe's silence, because the way this Rebbe works is when you ask him something, or after he talks and he looks at you for a bracha, he looks right into your face and he doesn't talk. He's like silent, and it's like you're standing face to face, and it's intense and it's quiet. So I remember that my friend broke down. He was very emotional. He broke into tears, and he said to him, "Rebbe, thank you for teaching me the virtue of silence." I remember that. Very powerful. The virtue of silence. Guess what, Chevra? Every morning we can have that experience, Shmon Esrei, the silent prayer, Amida. And we stand, Amidah, we stand during this service. What's going on over here? What's going on, the Rebbe's Masbir explains in this chapter, it's the avodah of bittul b'metziut, the avodah of nullification of self completely, totally. In Shema, as meditative as it is and as powerful as it is, as he explained, nevertheless, there is still some of the yesh left, of the ego left. And in fact, the fact that you're sitting and settled contributes to the existence of yesh. In other words, Shema enhances the I, the you. Amida, Shmon Esrei, annuls the I. Is the totally opposite avodah of Shema. Both are necessary. Because before you can truly become batel, nullified, there has to be something to be nullified. If there's no something there to be nullified, there's no nullification. So you have to first go through Shema and be settled. And within that perspective, you come to a deeper realization where you realize that you don't realize and you let go. And this is Avodah Shmon Esrei. And the enigmatic thing is that specifically during Shmon Esrei is when we ask for healing and Geula and Teshuvah and all the 18, 19 benedictions, brachas. Wait a minute. If I don't exist, if I'm annulled, what do you mean? Baruch atah Hashem broi v'chayli. Cure the ill, bring refuah, bring healing, bring geula. And the Rebbe explained this once in a talk in conjunction with the Tfilas Chana, the prayer of Chana that we say in the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah. And the Rebbe says that if you look into the Tanakh over there, the wording of Tanakh is so precise. She was bitter and she murmured under her breath, In other words, she was in a state of bittul. So her request came from a state of bittul. And so what does this mean? This means like this. There is requests coming from a state of settlement and calmness and harmony. But that still gives room for ego. When it comes to Shmon Esrei, the petitioner, the person who's davening, has the ability to reach a silence where he doesn't have to involve his ego for prayer, for requests to be requested. In other words, it's like Hashem, and that's why, let's go back to that first opening line that I spoke so much about last week. Hashem, Kama, Svasai Tiftach, open my lips, Ufi Yagat Tilasecha, and my lips will say your praise. So I said last week, and I repeat it now, it begins with Hashem, and then you got to pause. If you don't understand that it's all Hashem, Svasai Tiftach, open my lips, and my mouth will say your praise, what won't happen? It won't happen because you're still not into Hashem. You're still not subservient to Hashem. So the first thing is Hashem. Then Svasai Tiftach. If you want me to pray, open my lips. If you don't want me to pray, I'll be quiet. And if you want me to pray, you open my lips, my mouth will say your praise. But it's all coming as a derivative of Hashem. So yes, Yoini, we're asking for refuah, and we're asking for geula, and we're asking for tshuva. But it's coming as God inserting himself in our mouths and telling us, say this, pray for this. You know why? Because I want you to be healthy. I want to have a world. I want to have a family. I want to have simchas. I want geula. So I, God, say, go ahead, do it. That's the perspective of Shmoneh Esrei. And this is why it's called the menorah. The menorah. What was the light needed for? We have plenty of light. The Gemara asks, did we need the light of a menorah for the world? For the Beis HaMikdash? No. The answer is, from there went out light. The disbursement of light throughout the world comes from the menorah and the Beis HaMikdash. It comes from the seat of the individual who goes through the transformation of Shmoneh Esrei. This is real light. Real light is not, what's the word I'm looking for? Is not adulterated light. Because if it has particles in it, and it has waves, and it has isms in it, and issues, it's not the light that we want. It's a for lack of a better word, a crippled light, impure light. Who wants such a light? What we're looking for is a godly light. A godly light is Shmoneh Esrei. So the light coming from Krishma, it's a light, but still it comes from you. And when it comes from you, when you still haven't annulled yourself completely, bittul b'mitziyut, not bittul hayesh. So what the Minha is alluding to here are two familiar terms in Chabad Hasidism, which you've learned, Velvel, I'm sure. Bittul hayesh, Dr. Rabbi Nissim Mendel, I love his translation of bittul hayesh in the book 10 Commandments. The obliteration of self. The obliteration of self, he translates as bittul hayesh. What's bittul b'mitzias? The obliteration of idea, of notion. Self is already a definition and a category. For self to be self, there needs to be the idea that self is a value. Bittul b'mitzias means the non-existence that this is not a value. Self is not a value if it's only from just the self perspective. When does self become a value? When it's a derivative and a byproduct of Hashem Svasai Tiftach. This is basically the point that he said in the previous paragraph, and the Rebbe.
Just to clarify, so bittul b'metzias is that much deeper than even bittul hayesh.
Yes, not only is it not correct, but much more so. It's an entire different quality of bittul.
Yeah.
You understand? It's not just a quantitative difference, it's a qualitative difference. The Rebbe then said that this expresses itself in Minha. In other words, there is the Shachris Shmoneh Esrei. So what's the virtue of Mincha? And the Gemara says his prayers were only answered because of Mincha. Why? We just finished explaining the virtue of Shmon Esrei, and any Shmon Esrei, Ma'ariv or Shacharis or Mincha. Why Mincha? So he brings, of course, the Gemara and the Chazal, that the fact that you're able to, in the middle of the day, daven, pray, that shows that you're really committed, because in the morning hours, it's before daven, before work. So it's much easier to go to shul and to daven. In the evening, it's after work, so you have, before you retire, after supper, you go daven, or before supper, whatever. But in the middle of the day, when you're all tzakach, when you're all passionate about whatever you're doing, and you have to stop and go to daven, that takes a strength, a koyach. So therefore you get credit. The Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, yes, Moshe.
Just quick question, just to jump in on a very practical level. This is something I struggle with a lot. So a person davens mincha at the end of the day, meaning mincha katana, and then you have a small, slight, short break, and you daven ma'ariv. But here, you're talking about 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30, that range.
Right.
And I got to go back to work still. I got at least an hour and a half more, at least. So I'm just saying that Ma'ariv doesn't have that.
No.
It doesn't have that quality.
No, because Ma'ariv represents night, evening. So the fact that we have a short night and you're still working, that's our situation now. But Ma'ariv means night when we finished working. Ma'ariv represents night, finished working. Shachar represents morning before we begin work. And Mincha, regardless of the time, represents middle of the day. And the fact is, that's the way it is. I mean, how many, right? I got to make Mincha. It's the middle of the day.
Yeah.
But the Rebbe, let's go back. The previous Rebbe brings here a beautiful insight that's not brought in the Medrash and Chazal, and that is that the morning represents our youth years, yeshiva years, college years, before we get married, or maybe even the first year before you get into it. The evening, Ma'ariv night, represents our older years, where we're already semi-retired, retired, whatever. The Rebbe doesn't like the word retired, but when we're slowing down in certain ways and we're thinking about writing a book, lecturing, figuring out what to do, that's the nature of the beast. The middle years, Mincha, is the middle years of the person. On one hand, those years, it's our best years, right? Meaning to say, our productive years, but those are the toughest years. Raising children, marrying off children, parnasa, shalom bayis, community issues. I'm sure if every one of us will look back now on issues of 20, 30, 40 years ago, it pales in comparison, to the years when we're all, a little older. The issues are bigger issues now. Bigger issues then, I'm sorry. Now it's, getting a little less and less. So the Mincha years are the toughest years, says the Rebbe. That's why the Shmon Esrei of Mincha is like the most significant Shmon Esrei. In other words, here is an added nuance the way I understand the Maimer. That although Shmon Esrei in general is this avoda of bittul b'metzias, the silent avoda, like I told you before, and its virtue, but if you compare that Shmon Esrei of Shacharis to the Shmon Esrei of Mincha, there's no comparison. Why? Because the timing of Mincha, the overall timing, is more valuable than the timing of Shacharis. Shacharis, get up 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. If and if you don't want to have disturbances of cars beeping and parking and running around, get up early. I was at the Yoel at 4:30, 5 o'clock. No one's there. It was a machaya. It was no traffic. Beat the traffic. It's quiet. Everyone could. I'm saying. Go do that on a Monday or a Tuesday in Brooklyn, going on the Belt Parkway. The ride itself makes you crazy. You come to the oil, you're like farmished, with all the baggage. And the same as in Yerushalayim on the roads and all that. I'm sure now with all the new housing, Baruch Hashem, there's a lot more traffic, and probably it'll get worse in the next 10 years. But the point being that the Mincha time, when a Yid is able to daven a Shmoneh Esrei and to express silence during Mincha, that shows that in the heart of the beast, when the person is so faryok means so confused and so hurried and so anxious about marrying of children, having children, the health of children. I share with you this past weekend, this Shabbos, yesterday, we went to a Shabbaton in Stamford, Connecticut, and there were 1,000 people there. And these were the most frum of the frum Hasidim in the greater New York area, from Monsey to Lakewood to Borough Park to Williamsburg, and mostly Streimels and Payas. And the women wore the white scarves of the white kupkes, and they dressed in black. Many of them, and this is something that I'm used to. In Borough Park is not as heavy as Williamsburg, but it was wonderful to see. And there was some Sfardim, a few, and there was some Litvaks, a few, but mostly it was Hasidim. And there were about 5 to 10 Chabadniks there, myself included. And I have different thoughts, and still thinking, still developing this. I would like to maybe share it publicly on a clip. But this idea of Shachris and Mincha and Mariv, the Mincha years is when people are dealing with issues, and these were issues, people, with various kinds of issues with their children, various forms. And it's really, the Mincha years. Because when you're a Zayd and a Baba, a grandfather, a grandmother, a Saba and a Safta, it's a whole different relationship. It's a whole different world. I was sitting next to a person who was between 75 to 80. And he showed me a Chumash, and he showed me, see this translation? I made this translation on Targum Yonason. Wow. I never saw a translation, commentary on Targum Yonason. Who learns the Targum Yonason? So that itself was impressive. And then he reminded me that he was a printer years ago. I remember once going to his printing place, whatever. And then he asked me if I could translate something of his into, his writing. And I told him I could, but I don't do that. That's not the... I said, if you want a biography, me to write up your life, that I'm interested in. But anyway. And I said to him, like, are you here as a guest speaker? Are you here as a supporter of this organization? Because... I didn't tell him, but, like 75 to 80, everyone here is 40, 45, 50, 55. And he said to me, no, I have a son, I think he said, who's special needs, and I'm here for the chizuk. Amazing. 75 to 80 years old. He's married with kids. He has grandkids and maybe great-grandkids. And he's still walking around with this issue, which is part of his life. Very, very, very interesting and very telling, something to think about. But nevertheless, overall, the grandparent years are different years. The youth years, when you're just beginning your family, is enough. The middle years is where we're all dealing with the issues, and we're talking with each other here. We know, we have. I think we still have some of that in our lives and our children, etc. So it's the Mincha years that are the most difficult years. And if you can, in the middle of Mincha, those years, tear yourself away from the issues and come to a place of silence. And silence doesn't mean, I do want to say this, Velvel, silence doesn't mean being foolish and stupid, excuse the expression. Silence doesn't mean I'm a nab and a dummy. It's not what it means. Silence means that you've transformed yourself where you have issues. But your perspective changes. And this is really an important nakuda. We have to change the paradigm. That paradigm shift, that's so important. And until you get to that paradigm shift, you're gonna have issues. And this isn't easy. So we call it betochen and we call it emunah. Everyone has their different name to it. But the bottom line is, the Shemoneh Esrei of Mincha is the paradigm shift every day that a person can experience. This is something you said. One more thing, Moshe asked me to share and explain what the Rebbe says, talking about the menorah. He quotes the verse on page 137 towards the end of the page, about 6-7 lines from the end. HaMenorah nasis kikar zov. The menorah was made of one lump of gold. The word kikar, he says, gematria is 240, ram, it equals exalted, and simultaneously over gematria mar. It's a gematria, the numerical equivalent of bitter, mar. And the Rebbe says, I love this line I told you, Hainu, hein azmi is by zich gehoiben, whether one is exalted by himself, oy chas v'shalom, or God forbid, mi is by zich zerbrochen, one is shattered within himself, from yoni oilam, from worldly matter that the person has issues with children, health, and parnosa. Regardless whether you're doing great or whether you're not doing great, on the contrary, you have to make that issue into menorah. And my friends, I heard this and saw it, and by the Rebbe, day in and day out. All kinds of Yidden, from big Rabbanim to big Hasidim, to regular people, to Lahavdil non-Jews, would come and they would talk their heart out. And they wrote to him. And you'll never find him, I shouldn't say never, seldom ever finding him, I don't want to use, a word that's inappropriate, but I think bichinг, excuse the expression, about issues. On the contrary, he would write back, you're being morbid, marash chayra. He wrote this to my wife's grandfather, who was a major Talmud Chacham and a major Chassid, and the Rebbe Shliach. And he wrote about community issues. He had hundreds of correspondence with the Rebbe, and they're printed. And you'll see the Rebbe says to him, "This is marash chayra." But Rebbe, I have a problem in the community. There's a problem between the rabbi and the congregants and this kind and that kind, and whether we should go here, should we do that. So the Rebbe gives advice, but he says, stop with the negativity. Stop with the marash chayra. That was the Rebbe. And what is he teaching us? That we have to do the same thing. And it's hard. I'm talking to myself. It's a very hard avodah to be always positive. To think positive. Trach gut v'zayin gut, which you've all heard. Think good and it'll be good. The Rebbe was teaching this is it can be real and needs to be real. And if it'll be real, you'll be happy. So like Reb Chaim Shalom Deitch of Yerushalayim said, I told you this too, one Farbrengen right there in Bet Shemesh, and the other, where the Hasidim are down there. I was there. And he starts off and he says, there was about 100 guys in the room. He says, if I start thinking, I get up in the morning and I think about myself, I become very sad and morbid. I have this kid that way, and I have this grandkid this way, and I have this. But when you don't think that way, and you think about others, what can you do for others? You become freilach. And the Rebbe taught that shita. What can we do for others? The fact that we ask Hashem to help us and take care of our needs and all that, yes. But the mindset, that's what I'm saying, the paradigm shift from complaining. Stop complaining. Stop complaining, because it's really a waste of energy. Just take the bull by its horn, do what's right, and listen. If you have to go to a din Torah, there's a din Torah. You have to go to a civil court. You have to go to a psychologist. There are systems in place to deal with issues, but the overall attitude has to be from the changing negative positive. I tell you again, I knew someone, one of my congregants years ago, who the husband and wife were fighting cats and dogs. The wife said, I'll teach you a lesson. I'm not going to the mikveh. The husband said, oh, really? I'm going to give you a divorce. They come to Rabbi Dolphin. He comes to Rabbi Dolphin. I can't take this. Rabbi Dolphin says, listen, try another 3 months. 3 more months, he comes back. He says, nothing has changed. She's not going to the mikveh. I want a divorce. I said, well, I'm not going to give you permission to give a divorce because I'm not at that level, and I don't have that. I was a much younger rabbi at the time. I said, you write to the Rebbe, and he was a Lubavitcher. And I said, if the Rebbe tells you, you're scot-free, you're on his shoulders. I don't have such a big shoulders. He wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answered him within a few hours, and he sent the FedEx in, and the Rebbe quoted the Chazal and the Gemara, Goydel Inyan Shalom Bayis, how great Shalom Bayis is, Askar Alatzin, I will bless you at the Ohel. Basically meaning, you stay put, buddy. And guess what happened? He changed his attitude towards his wife. She went to the mikveh and they're happily married today. This is a maisa that happened with me and them, real, not fantasy. Okay? Now, am I going to tell you it always works? No, I'm not going to say that. But overall, it was. And so what happened? What happened? Was a miracle? Did the Rebbe make a miracle? No. He changed his attitude. He was giving her a very bad time. So she said, I'm going to teach you a lesson. You think you're going to play around with me? I knew that. They'll be both tough people from Brooklyn, sharp, tough, and smart. You play with me, I'll play with you. So he changes his attitude, and she becomes a sweetheart. And she goes to the mikveh, and they have a good marriage. Am I saying it's the best?
You have a very good success rate in marriage counseling.
Baruch Hashem. You know why? Because I learned and continue to learn to put yourself aside. That's the only way that marriages and relationships will work. If, in Yiddish, there's the word mifarbeit sich. You put yourself aside. You don't get it your way. Yeah, that's it. That's right. You swallow your pride. And if you can't swallow your pride, it's over. It's a disaster. And for the sake of children and grandchildren and family and community and yourself, how many people have gone the other route and they're miserable? What have you accomplished? You're not 25, Mr. Macho, bodybuilder anymore. You're an old, you know what? I don't want to say it on air, So who's looking at you? What are you, who's looking at you? Yeah, who wants you? Who wants you? What are you, whether you have a beard, you don't have a beard. You ain't 20, 25, 30 years old. You're not a football player anymore. Bodybuilder. You're an old guy. Get out of here. Oh, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run around and sleep around. Okay, you want to do that? Ruin your life. Become a nut. Get diseases and who knows? You're going to give away everything? So that maybe it's better to swallow your pride, stay married, stay in the relationship. And the same is with work. Employees. There's all kinds of issues. How many times we've told our children, until you have a secure other position, you don't leave your position. Swallow your pride. Yes, and I'm very proud of some of my daughters who really, I felt, deserved to leave the place because the pay was so little and what they did and what they're doing. And they said no. And they outdid me, and I'm happy. I'm the happiest parent is when a child does better than a parent. That's makes you the happiest. And what's the message? The message is you stay put. You don't run. And the Rebbe taught this too. Crown Heights was going bust. Brooklyn was on fire. Not just Chicago, Brooklyn, LA in the 60s. Wow, neighborhoods. Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, stay put. But they're shooting. Stay put. No? Those that stayed put and bought up real estate today, their bank accounts are loaded. $20,000, $30,000 a house that's worth today $1 million. Yeah, that's what you could have gotten a house in 1971, 72, 73 in Crown Heights and in Brownsville and in East Flatbush. And today it's worth $7, $8, $9 million, $100,000, right? The Rebbe said, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said it. The Satmarov said it. Those three. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein stayed in the Lower East Side. The Rebbe stayed in Crown Heights. The Satmarov stayed in Williamsburg. the Puerto Ricans of Williamsburg, the issues of Crown Heights and the issues of the Lower East Side? No. Torah says you stay put. The idea is, when you look at yourself, and frankly, many of my neighbors here, and I've just had discussions with them, including their leadership, they looked at themselves, and they left, and they went to Borough Park, and God bless them. God bless them. But our Rebbe's attitude, and as I say, it wasn't only the Rebbe, it was Rabbi Feinstein, who was Litvish, not a Chassid, and the Satmar Rov was Satmar. They said, no, you don't leave. In other words, so when there are issues, and this is what the Rebbe means, I want to conclude. Moshe asked me, whether it's rum, whether you're on top of the world, or it's mar, it's bitter, you have to make a menorah out of it. Nase menorah mikikar zahav. From that lump of gold, turn it into a menorah. From the problem, turn the problem into a springboard for positivity. You need direction, and you need help, and you need therapy, and you need rabbis, and you need counselors and friends. Granted, but stick with the program. And I think, we talk to ourselves, and then we share it with others. And that's what it means, Moshe. Did you have anything in particular in mind that you were thinking about when I said that last time that you wanted to be elaborate, or it makes sense to you now?
Thanks. No, it makes sense. Everything you shared today is very, very helpful. Very helpful.
It's an ongoing issue, the ongoing issue, and this is the beauty of life. I mean, the beauty of life is the challenges. The beauty of life is not when everything's going well. It's not the way when everything's going your way, the way you see it your way. The beauty is when you take something that's difficult and you make it into good, you're a much stronger person. You've really accomplished something. Yes, Hillel.
Just want to share with you that in a piece I was reading last week from the Tolner Rebbe, he described when his grandfather, Rabbi Yochanan, the old Tolner Rebbe, went to meet with the Frierdiker Rebbe, whose Torah we're learning.
Yeah.
And he asked him for a bracha that he shouldn't have nisyonos in life. And the Rebbe said that nisyonos are the ikar. That was his answer to him. Nisyonos are the ikar, and he says, don't we say in the morning brachas, don't bring me to a nisayon? And so the Rebbe said, he says, yeah, but look what it says right after, lo lidei nisayon,
lo lidei vizayon. The whole reason not to have nisyonos is we shouldn't be ashamed, but the nisyonos themselves we have to embrace. That was his answer to Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah, and thank you very much for sharing, because I'm a good company. I said that nisyonos is it's a thing to work on. Like you say, the balance between Al tivideinu le'indei nisayon v'lo le'indei bizayon. So you heard what the Frierdiker Rebbe told the Tolner Rebbe. Very good. That not that you shouldn't have a nisayon. The result of the nisayon shouldn't be a bizayon, an embarrassment. And when does it become embarrassment? When you reject the nisayon. That's the way I'm interpreting his answer.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what he was telling. He was telling the Tolner Rebbe, don't reject the nisayon. Anyone else want to say anything? This is a little heavy, so we have to air it out a little bit. Avram, Velvel, Yoini, Yonason, any thoughts? Yes, Velvel, you want to say something? No, okay. Avram?
Yes, I think about when I met Aliyah back in 2009. I was really unprepared for the test I was about to embark on. but they made me such a much stronger person. What I really wanted to capture was that the closest I got to Hashem when I was suffering, I wanted to maintain that same closeness when things got better. When you go from a Mar to a Ram, sometimes you forget about what you went through.
Right.
But you want to hold on to that and use it to keep you going, so you won't go back to that place where you have all that suffering again.
And not only won't you go back, you'll use the energy in a positive way.
Yes. So I'm a totally different person. I mean, Moshe was around.
Baruch Hashem, but it's only a beginning, Avram. It's only a beginning. You have many more years, and you have grandkids. You have a whole lineup. So
I got 4 sons who just one still at home. So I had my share of testing those 4 boys. Believe me.
Good. Have a great day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Hashem. Shalom. Bye bye. Oh, Tu B'Shvat Higia, Chag HaIlonot. Happy Tu B'Shvat to everybody. Growth. Bye.
Amen.